hon. What you got there?
It's a fighter helmet that I made during a big battle in space.
You worked hard on that, didn't you?
What's that?
It's just a drum.
You're dreaming hard. That's good. Hey, you're imagining things.
I'll teach you something, Art. Dreams don't pay the bills. Nothing good comes from them. All it does is keep you from all this. From knowing what's real. You understand that? Huh?
Yes, Daddy.
Well, that's a piece of junk. Just go throw it away.
As usual, you were not expecting me. I'm sure you can recognize who I am, but if you don't, let me introduce myself. It is I who worship God for thousands of years. I was the greatest of all slaves. My beauty lifted the hearts of the crowds. My light outshined the stars. And I was determined to ascend above the clouds to the high sacredness of God. And it happened. My wish was granted. It was a dream come true. I was rewarded by my Creator to be amongst the finest angels, the most loved. I was adoring all my eminence until your father, Adam, was created. I couldn't believe that I, the greatest of all, had to prostrate to an insignificant human made from clay. Difficult it was. I refused. I said no to the Almighty. I worshipped God for thousands of years. For how long had Adam served him? Why was Adam given the whole earth to rule? Clearly, I deserved it all, without a doubt. I am the one to rule and command the earth. On the day of my refusal to kneel, I turned into the worst creature, became the enemy of God and his faithful servants. God promised me to enter hell on the day of judgment and to be held there for eternity. All this has happened because of you. I hate and envy you the same way I envied your father. cry and scream as I will. Do you wish to know how I will achieve this? I will uncover the secrets behind my deceptions, the cunning tricks, the manipulation of strategies, and use it all to lead you towards sin. I will show you how I enter the heart of mankind to cause corruption in the world. You must be wondering why I reveal my secrets to you. Don't worry. You will forget it all by the end of your meeting. To start, I want to clear a misconception you might have. Sadly, I have no power to force you to sin. Only by influencing your free will can I drive mankind to disobey. My grand agenda aims to strip the world from religious beliefs. My strategy to mislead you is very simple. I first try to drag you to infidelity and associating partners with God, which is the greatest sin. If you resist and don't get tricked, I like this one. I then move to God, which is the queen's major sins, like abandoning your prayers, adultery, causing harm to your fellow man, drinking alcohol. If you are a true believer and kept steadfast, I don't get discouraged. I call you towards minor sins. If you ignore me, I then occupy your days with permissible matters that are not sins or good deeds, like overeating, pursuing worldly affairs. All these will prevent you from getting rewards. The way I do all this is by gradually entering your heart through your weaknesses. Through what you love most, I attract you step by step. By beautifying this world in your eyes, I make it magical. Hard to resist, tough to reject. Wealth, power, fame, and women become the center of all thoughts. The core that the whole world orbits around. I hypnotize you to run from one passion to another, committing evil endlessly. The more you people sin, the more I occupy your souls. And when you discover the truth that you became my slaves, you would be dead. If all these fail, I begin to plant fear and sadness in your heart. Poverty will become scary, so that you lie and cheat. I make you fear the oppressor, so that you don't stand up for the oppressed. I make you fear everything except God. Once you remain undefeated, then it is time for a most powerful trick. I use my elite slaves, those who dedicate their lives to me and my agenda. I command them to manipulate your life, to harm you, prosecute you, and to distort your reputation. They can approach you from every side. With this scheme, I can diminish your willpower and strength to resist. I can disable you from moving forward towards God. In this way to God, don't think you can overthrow me. I will show you what no one has ever seen from me. I will whisper and invite day and night. I will enter your soul through what you love most to make your evil self meaner, greedier, needier. I will feed your mind with evil and daunting thoughts to diminish your determination. It is I who will be victorious. It is I who will last.
But you see then, once we are up against this possibility that the distinction between what we do and what happens to us is obliterated. And therefore we would say with Hindus and Buddhists that if I run into a catastrophe, it is my karma. You see, that means far more than that it is a punishment for something I did wrong in the past. That is a legalistic view of karma. But a naturalistic or organic view of karma is, in fact, that what happens to me is what I do. And that in a certain sense, I want what happens to me. We can use want. Notice how we use this word. It means to desire and it means to lack or to need. We say to somebody, you're wanting, you're deficient in something that you need. So it's rather alarming, really, when you consider it, that you always get what you want. Invariably. Even though you may think that it's entirely opposed to your wishes. But if it's your karma, everything that happens to you, put it in another way, everything that comes to you is a return to you of what goes out of you. Yes, obviously, that's absurd. If you confine the definition of yourself to your voluntary, conscious behavior. That's a ridiculous definition of oneself. Oneself, by any stretch of the imagination, must involve far more than the conscious and voluntary aspects of our behavior. And if we see that it involves intimately and inescapably the behavior of what we call the other, the not-self, the environment, and see that these two are moving together like the two sides of the snake when it swims, then you get a very curious feeling. You have to be careful of it if you've got a Western background. Because this is what happens to a lot of people who play around with psychedelic chemicals. There are many, many cases of inflation among these people. That is to say, when you get this sensation that the two sides of the world, the inside and the outside, are moving together, you may think, I am ruling it. I am God in the Western sense of the word. Therefore, your ego, instead of being, as it were, integrated and transcended with all this process, merely assumes vast dimensions, has megalomania, is blown up by the mystical experience. And so you get the holier-than-thou people going around who seem to think that they're above all human conventions and have no obligations to anyone or anything because they're divine and they can do as they damn please. What they haven't realized is that doing as you will isn't a new kind of behavior that you suddenly put on and say, from now on I'm going to go around doing as I will. You have to realize first that that's what you've always been doing. And you can look at this from a very simple point of view. It's not a complete point of view. But you can say, well, now what about the people who did good and who did the things that they didn't want to do? You know, everybody's mother said, darling, sometimes we have to do things we don't like. What about that? Well, you can always say, the kid obeyed the mother and did the thing that he didn't like because that was the better part of wisdom. In other words, if he hadn't done that, something worse would have happened. And we choose the lesser of two evils.
Two experienced runners have trained very hard for the race. Stringent diet. Every muscle, every sinew is in place and in order. Their breathing and stride has been trained for years for this race. And now the race has begun. And as they begin to run, focused on their goal, they've run for about 10 kilometers now. And now they're about to reach the finish line. And the terrain of the ground they're running on side by side changes and begins to incline. And inherently what happens is that the two runners bump into each other slightly, one slightly kicking the other in the shin. One runner sucks in the pain, keeps his stride, and keeps running. The other runner doesn't suck in the pain, looks towards the other runner and says, "Watch out where you're going. Look at what you did to me." In a panic desperation, he begins to lose his breathing, his footing, and loses the race. Why? Because he let anger stumble him. You see, he trained his body, but unlike the latter, he didn't train his mind and his heart. How have you trained for the race we're running? How can you keep anger from stumbling you? Maybe when someone says or does something to you that makes you angry, you might take a deep breath, or count to 10, or just bite your tongue. And these are Noble's attempt to keep the peace. You see, some leading professionals will tell you to vent that anger. Just let it out. Go ahead and holler. While other professionals say that statistics show that repeated outbursts of anger will give you a higher risk factor of death than smoking, high blood pressure, or high cholesterol. But what does the ultimate professional say? The engineer of the human body, Jehovah. At Psalm, the 37th Psalm, verse 8, he says, "Leave anger alone." Now, why would he say something like that? Well, there's all types of evidence of human action pertaining to anger. Uncontrolled emotions lead to uncontrolled action. Haven't some of you said or thought, "They don't know me, I can get crazy"? And you wasn't lying either. All of us are capable of crazy, uncontrolled actions. There's a lesson in Cain in our Bible, friend. We all will get angry sometime, we can count on that. But how we react to that anger will determine how we finish the race. Turn in your Bibles to Genesis, the 4th chapter. And we'll read verses 6 through 8. See if you can notice at what point did anger stumble Cain. Genesis, the 4th chapter, verses 6 through 8. At this Jehovah said to Cain, "Why are you hot with anger, and why is your countenance fallen? If you turn to doing good, will there not be an exaltation? But if you do not turn to doing good, there is sin crouching at the entrance, and for you is its craving. And will you, for your part, get the mastery over it?" After that, Cain said to Abel his brother, "Let us go over into the field." So it came about that while they were in the field, Cain proceeded to assault Abel his brother and kill him. Did you notice at what point anger stumbled Cain? It was long after he was already angry. Time had passed by. Jehovah gave him direction to help him cool down. But what did Cain do? After that, Cain decided to go ahead with the anger, let it grow, and it ended up in murder. You see, we can do the same thing when we let outbursts of anger take over us. We can disrespect, dishonor, ignore Jehovah when he speaks. And we're all aware of some of the scriptures in the Bible that pertain to anger. Some of us might say, well, we're only human. But don't these scriptures help us see that Jehovah holds us responsible for our actions, and that he designed the human body and he knows we're fully capable of slowing down, thinking on something else, and changing our disposition? Isn't that the opportunity he gave Cain? And he gives each of us that opportunity, and he holds us equally responsible. Saul had a similar problem we can learn from. Turn in your Bibles to 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter, verse 8. 1 Samuel, the 18th chapter, verse 8. We're probably quite familiar with the jealousy that Saul developed for David. He was getting all the applause for all the victories. And we'll take up the account with what Saul has to say about the circumstance. 1 Samuel 18th chapter verse 8. Saul began to be very angry. And this saying was bad from his viewpoint, so that he said, they've given David tens of thousands, but to me they have given 1,000. And there's yet only the kingship to give him. Did you notice what was the root of Saul's jealous anger? Look again, verse 8. This saying was bad from his viewpoint. It's how he looked at the matter. Jealousy only let Saul see it in that small little window that said, David has to go and I need to stand. It was how he looked at it. The people never said they wanted David to have the kingship, but isn't that what Saul assumed? When the kingship left to give him. How many times do we assume?
This was providence.
Well, I think you're blowing it a little out of proportion.
No, I'm not. Lana saw it too, and the foreman. And this isn't the first time Clark's done something like this. I just wanted to help.
I know you did, but we talked about this. Right? Right? We talked about this. You have... Clark, you have to keep this side of yourself a secret.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
There's more at stake here than just our lives, Clark, or the lives of those around us. We'll find out what you can do. It's going to change everything. Our beliefs, our notions of what it means to be human, everything. You saw how Pete's mom reacted, right? She was scared.
Why?
People are afraid of what they don't understand.
Is she right? God knew this. Tell me.
We value this. We were sure the government was going to show up on our doorstep, but no one ever came. This was in the chamber with you. I took it to a metallurgist in Kansas State. He said whatever it was made from didn't even another way of saying that it's not from this world, Clark. And neither are you. You're the answer, son. You're the answer to are we alone in the universe?
I don't want to be.
And I don't blame you, son. It'd be a huge burden for anyone to bear, but you're not just anyone, Clark, and I have to believe that you were sent here for a reason. All these changes that you're going through, one day you're gonna think of them as a blessing, and when that day comes, you're gonna have to make a choice. A choice of whether to stand proud in front of the human race or not.
Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?
You are my son. But somewhere out there, you have another father too who gave you another name. And he sent you here for a reason, Clark. And even if it takes you the rest of your life, you owe it to yourself to find out what that reason is. Something, isn't it? When men in Kansas live on a pancake, so we come to the mountains. All downhill from here. Down to the floodplain. Where I'm at the bottom of the world. I remember one season water came bad. There couldn't have been 12. Dad had out the shovels and we went at it all night. We worked till I think I fainted. We managed to stop the water. We saved the farm. Your grandma baked me cake. Said I was a hero. Later that day we found out. We blocked the water all right. We sent it upstream. The whole Lang farm washed away. While I ate my hero cake, their horses were drowning. I used to hear them wailing in my sleep. Did the nightmares ever stop? Yeah. When I met your mother, she gave me faith that there's good in this world. She was my world. I miss you, son. I miss you too, Dad.
And your knees can't take the pound. So hard running is out. And you got arthritis in your neck. You've got calcium deposits on most of your joints. So sparring is out.
I had that problem.
So what we'll be calling on is good old-fashioned blunt force trauma. Horsepower. Heavy-duty cast iron pile-driving punches that will have to hurt so much they'll rattle his ancestors. Every time you hit him with his shot, it's gotta feel like he tried kissing the express train. Yeah, let's start building some hurting bombs.
And when you find yourself in a situation where you have to choose the lesser of two evils, then you say, I want out of here. You take the easiest way. You take the line of least resistance. So that's your doing. Now, you can pursue that more profoundly when you stop thinking about human behavior as something that responds to the compulsion of an environment. And you can get out of that when you see the behavior of the environment as an essential aspect of you. So it isn't, as it were, the environment starting something, which you are therefore compelled to follow. It's the whole system moving together. So then, you get in the state of liberated or mystical consciousness, you very often feel that a hill is lifting you up as you walk up it. The ground seems to heave beneath your feet, and up you go. And you get this strange feeling of lightness, of effortlessness. Walking on air, never a care, you know. This wonderful sense that there are no obstructions anywhere. There's nothing, as it were, banging you and making you do that. It all flows together. And that's a very common sense. And that's, you are actually, in that state of consciousness, you are perceiving the goings-on, the Tao, the course of nature, in the way it's happening. But in the ordinary way, you've been conditioned to resist it, to fight it, and to use those sensations of resistance to create a sensory basis for what you describe as the ego. The ego, in practice, is a sense of strain. When you are aware of I, you are aware of a basic discomfort, which is located basically between the eyes, somewhere in here, a sort of tightness. Also, it's in other centers too. It's in the solar plexus, and there are various physical centers, in other words, where this constant tension or resistance against it is going on. And that's what you feel when you talk about I. When that tension ceases, you discover immediately that the separate ego has disappeared, and that what I refers to is simply the total panorama of experience, everything that's happening. That's I. And obviously I don't know all of it, because I can't inspect all of it with my radar, with my conscious attention. That would be a ridiculous undertaking, to know everything in that sense. We know it in a much better way, as we know how to grow hair and open and close our hands. So, this point of view can be understood if we clarify the initial problems we have about it. And I suppose the first problem is, if we accept the notion that everything that happens to us is our own karma, our own doing, then we have to be very careful of, shall we say, the devil of omnipotence, of inflation, of feeling that your ego is what is in control of all this. And the second thing is, if you think then that everything that happens to everybody is what they really want to happen, then you can absolve yourself from any qualms about being unkind to someone. Because you could say, well, the unkindness I did you was what you really wanted, wasn't it? You know that business about the responsibility of the person who gets murdered for getting murdered? There is a curious sense in which a lot of people go around looking for trouble. Freud pointed out quite correctly the psychology of accident-prone individuals. They seem to be attracting trouble like lights attract moths. And we're all doing that. But we manage to remain unconscious of it, so that we can praise and blame, play the game that says, that's not my fault, that's your fault. And so we go around apportioning faults to everybody. Because if we're going to apportion praise for what the good things people do, you can't make praise mean anything unless you also go around blaming. Praise and blame go together. Supposing everybody was acting in a praiseworthy way, and we praised everybody for everything, they'd get tired of it. They wouldn't even notice it anymore. So long as you're going to get a kick out of being praised, you've got to go around blaming too. It's very simple.
How you doing? Glad you come by.
Can I talk with you?
Sure.
We're outside? So you're going through with this?
Yeah, I start training tomorrow.
They're up. I made some connections. I can make some money on this endorsements.
Absolutely, do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
So nervous about the fight?
They're scared to death.
Look scared?
But you ain't supposed to.
If you don't have to do it.
Yeah, well, I think I do.
You know, living with you hasn't been easy. People see me, but they think of you. Now with all this going on, this is gonna be worse than ever.
It don't have to be.
No, sure it does.
Why? You got a lot going on, kid.
But what, my last name? That's the reason I got a decent job. That's the reason why people deal with me in the first place. Now I start to get a little ahead. I start to get a little something for myself. And this happens. Now I'm asking you as a favor not to go through with this, okay? This is only gonna end up bad for you, and it's gonna end up bad for me.
You think I'm hurting
Yeah, in a way you are.
you? It's the last thing I ever wanted to do.
I know that's not what you want to do, but that's just the way that it is. Don't you care what people think? Doesn't it bother you that people are making you out to be a joke and that I'm gonna be included in that? Do you think that's right? Do you?
You ain't gonna believe this. Where you used to fit right here, I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody ever knew. And you look good and wonderful. It was great just watching you every day. It was like a privilege. Then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. You stopped being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you you're no good. And when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always gonna love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you're gonna have a life. Don't forget to visit your mother.
But if you see the folly of that praising and blaming are just creating each other. then you don't praise and you don't blame. You just dig the whole thing. And that's why, when we encounter very great sages, you never hear them blame people, and they very rarely praise anyone. You try to start gossip in the presence of such a person, and you make a derogatory comment about someone. It's as if you had thrown a rock into a well and heard no splash. A funny feeling, because that you get no response. You get no agreement. And if you praise somebody, there's also likely nothing to be said, except perhaps some remark that, of course, you're praising the beloved in all its manifestations. And this disconcerts some people terribly. I've always noticed that real sages never gossip, never criticize persons. And because they understand so well. The French saying, tout comprendre, c'est tout pardonner, to understand all is to forgive all, is so true if you're experienced in just the ordinary way of dealing with human problems. If you've been a counselor or psychotherapist or minister or anything like that, you very soon get to realize how vastly complicated people are, and to see that they really are in the messes they're in, not because of anything, but that's the way it is.